This is the Decision Point with Anand and Nanduri. Anand, we had the NFL draft. We covered it live from Kansas City. You were at the draft. Talk about the experience.
It was awesome, man. It took me, Jack, a couple others, and we went into the media room and kind of got a chance. Jason Allwine had a couple of really great clippings of quotes where he asked, I think it was CJ Stroud first, about, what he would give up for the Texans to go draft Jackson, as, him and Will Anderson were up there. And he was like, oh, I give my left leg for that. And then, we got to come back around. And when Jackson was up on stage, we told him about that and got his reaction. So it was a really cool experience. Obviously, it's great on our end to be, considered a part of the media and create some of that actual content, be able to ask those questions ourselves. And, obviously some of them are fantasy relevant. Some of them are just questions about players and how they interact. But again, really, really cool experience. And I think Kansas City did a fantastic job with that draft.
And we were all living together in the house. We had a big draft house, and on Friday, the sewage in the basement started to rise. I think somehow if you flush the toilet and you're taking a shower, a confluence of events, and then sewage rose up. We had a whole studio space in the basement set up for day one. So if you go back and watch the stream of the NFL Draft Extravaganza, you could see where we're located. It's a different setup on day one than it was on day two. And I just got notification from Airbnb that we're going to get at least a 25% refund, if not a 50% refund. So I'm in limbo whether we're going to get 25 to 50% refund for this. But there was raw sewage that was coming up just as we were preparing for day two. So we had to scramble. Then we created an ad hoc main desk in the kitchen. And then we decided to have the couch area being in the main living room. And it was way better. So actually, the sewage forced us to upgrade our studio space.
And the funniest part about it too, right, is we had 4 levels of this house, if you include the basement, I guess, 4 separate sections. And all day long, somebody was doing something, right? Whether we had, yikes. I mean, forced us into some weird spots. But I mean, hey, I thought that the draft coverage went off without a hitch. I thought Cody, real MVP, Cody Carpentier, doing all of the work day 1, 2, and 3, man. Shout out to Cody.
He's a hero. He was the hero of the draft.
Yeah.
And he had like a top 20 mock draft as well in the mock draft contest.
Yeah. If
he had just flipped Quentin Johnston and Jackson Smith and Jigba, woo! He would have been top 10, if not top 5. Oh my God. That's all he needed. He had the wide receiver. He had right position, right team.
Yep. And
guy's good.
Yeah. I mean, shout out to Cody for all the work that he does, man. Like, you may not agree. We may not agree on every single thing, but I know that every opinion that Cody has been well-researched, documented. He's talked to somebody, and those are the kinds of opinions you want, right? If you're going to have an opinion that's not consensus, you want it to be based on something logical and tangible instead of, oh, I just woke up feeling this way.
Yeah, imagine if you're me, right? And you only see these players from afar, and you see their numbers, you see their workouts, you see their stats, and you don't have any additional context. You haven't talked to anyone that's actually been at a practice. And that's what Cody's doing. He's talking to all these scouts. He's talking to all these executives, agents, and he's getting a sense for who these players are and what their work ethic is like and these other things that matter, really matter. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, hey, player X. And then he'll just, under his breath, he'll go, dog, right? Or I'll go, player Y. And he'll be like, soft, And I'm like, okay, interesting, right? All right. And then he'll talk about some of the things that happened to a player off the field, whether it was an injury he was playing through. There's just all this context that helps to evaluate players. He has all of that. And then so we have a Billy and a Dario getting the numbers, and you have a Cody and an Alex Dunlap there from Roster Watch helping us understand all of the other factors that are in play with these players. And it's like you really get the full picture. And so when we roll out our rookie rankings on Player Profiler, for example, and everyone should go get our rookie rankings, or we put it all together with the write-ups, the stats, the comparables, play style comparables, metrics comparables, all the key stats you need, plus all of Cody's thoughts and grades on all these players. We put it in our rookie guide. It's only $10 on the homepage of playerprofiler.com. Go do it just to support what Cody's doing, support his work. If you appreciate him, just go download the rookie guide now. But that also then makes its way into the rookie rankings. That's why the rookie rankings, they're so good, because it's like we've got all the bases covered, unlike any other projection and ranking service. And he's at the center of all of that. And then he was also hosting every single pick. He was the main guy at the desk running the program and doing by far and away the most talking and analysis, and the rest of us were just sort of cycling through.
Yeah, I mean, 259 draft picks is a lot of people to know something about, period. Even to know how to say their names, that's a lot, right? And we talk about this often. We're not just a fantasy football site, right? We have context from guys like Alex from Roster Watch. Cody's doing real life football work. You know, we're starting to expand past simply being a fantasy analysis site, right? We saw what happened last year. We're going to project into this year. No. Now we're going into pro days and asking questions. You know, we're hopefully going to be in training camp, telling you what's happening live on the scenes, right? If Roschon Johnson breaks out at training camp and is RB1 for the Bears, you're going to hear it first, because I'll be there. Right?
Come on.
When?
Yeah,
when?
It's when.
Yeah, right.
And you see, some people don't get it. Like I saw on social media, I said, hey, raise your hand in shame if you think that Khalil Herbert or Dante Foreman's better than Roschon Johnson. And people are raising their hand. It's like, well, okay.
They're not.
I mean,
they're not.
They're just not. They're not.
They're
I mean, they're fine. Khalil Herbert's fine. Khalil Herbert's a good player. I appreciate Khalil Herbert very much. But come on,
he's not the Belk. Yeah, again, Roschon Johnson. The context that's important here, right, is he was a really productive rusher for Texas the year before Bijan got there. Right? Like, it's not like we have no evidence of production with him as the bell cow. But now, one thing that's going to get lost in all of this, right, is Bijan was the bell cow for Texas. All those carries, all those hits went to his body and not Roschon's, right? So you might get a little bit fresher a running back than you're used to, simply because he didn't take the toll that Bijan took at Texas, right? And we have evidence from year one that he can be a bell cow. All the testing metrics suggest that he's going to be a productive NFL running back. He landed in an ideal situation for a team that's going to want to run the ball. What more do you want?
I don't know. He didn't have a great burst score. He didn't destroy the vertical jump and the broad jump. But there's a bunch of running backs that didn't do that. And if you can break tackles, if you have great instincts, you have a great feel for the position, you don't necessarily have to have the greatest burst score. He's not the guy to run the stretch zone blocking scheme and be behind that and get to the edge, put his foot in the ground, and accelerate upfield. He's not Tevin Coleman on the Falcons. That's not it. That's not the fit, right? He's much more of a Le'Veon Bell type player. He's not going to be Le'Veon Bell, but Le'Veon Bell wasn't a first-round pick, and Le'Veon Bell didn't have great burst. Le'Veon Bell was just a great running back in all the key areas of the game where running backs are called upon to make plays on actual NFL football fields. That's what Roschon Johnson's great at, and it required a Bijan-level talent in order to supplant him, but he didn't flee Texas.
No, he didn't run from the competition.
Keontae Ingram, right? He didn't run and hide. He was committed to that program, and he was one of their leaders. And having seen him at the Senior Bowl and seen the other running backs at the Senior Bowl, from Chase Brown to Tajay Spears and on down, Cameron Peoples, there was such a gap, such a chasm between him and what he brought to the table. And how he carried himself and how he performed in practice versus those other guys, even Tajay Spears, who was great, people barely talked about him. I was talking about him with Ray Garvin after the first practice.
right.
So I was like, this Tajay Spears guy, and we were talking about his injury and how he's all the way back, and we were excited. But the NFL Network went straight to Roschon Johnson after that first practice. They beelined right to him. Pelissero, boom. Tom Pelissero went right straight, just
Good.
on a
And
line.
that's how you know.
Right to Roschon at the center of the football field. Now, we have to, Anand, we absolutely have to talk about the big winners and the big losers from the NFL draft coming up after this. Oh, hey, it's Mr. Breakout Finder coming at you. The Breakout Finder features 3 key tools: a database of metrics that includes speed score, college dominator, breakout age, but also Breakout Finder only stats like dynamic score, level of competition, teammate score. All of these things are part of the overall Breakout Finder algorithm that pinpoints the probability that a player will break out. Everyone's talking about my model does this and my model does that. Well, we give you the data points that go into the model. We have a feature that lets you compare players, and then we give you the precise probability of every wide receiver, every running back, sorted and filterable by class year. So when I'm talking to my friends and I need to show them why I'm so bullish on player X, I pull out the Breakout Finder and bam, there he is. So go to the App Store, go to Google Play. It's $5 to get the Breakout Finder, and then a couple extra bucks to get some of these additional enhanced stats. Go download it and thank me later. So the Breakout Finder, we project the draft slot of every player. And then once the actual draft slots come in, we rerun the model, we rerun the machine, and there's been a lot of updates to the Breakout Finder just in the last 24 hours. Dario just completed a massive update and a synchronization of the Breakout Finder. So get it now. If you already have it, go check it out, and you'll see the differences. You'll see the big movers up and down the Breakout Finder breakout ratings, and that's going to be a topic of conversation over the next week or two, is who moved up and who moved down the most in the Breakout Finder, but I want to make sure we talk about it because it is just $5 in the App Store to check out all the breakout ratings and machine learning predictions, probabilities of whether each player is going to break out at the NFL level. And some of these players have a breakout rating above 50%, which is incredible. Now, one player has a breakout rating above 80%. Can you guess his name?
I have not a clue.
Bijan Robinson, bro.
Yeah.
Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson has, because he's a running back drafted in the first round, he has by far and away the highest breakout rating in the database by far and away, and he's not a satellite back like Jahmyr Gibbs, so he's just in a totally different tier in the Breakout Finder to everybody else.
As he should be.
As he should be. But it's interesting to see the precise probability that Bijan Robinson breaks out. It's fascinating.
And I think, before we go into that, it was really awesome, again, going back to our time in Kansas City, watching Dario and Billy work, right? Because sometimes, when you get to the late 200s for some of these guys, when you get down to an A.T. Perry, Wake Forest, that was drafted by New Orleans, and I think round 6, right? The way that all of this comes together, right, is sometimes Billy would nudge me or Cody and be like, hey, what do you think of this player? How are they going to fit into this? So that we can figure out and tweak, target share in New Orleans for this player or for that player, and kind of get a comprehensive picture of not only what does A.T. Perry look like, but what does that do to Olave's target share? What does that do, based on what we consider all of the other players in that New Orleans backfield and in that New Orleans offense? How do we tweak all of their stuff also? So to watch that happen in real time as Dario and and Billy were going ahead and doing that was really cool to see. Obviously, everybody's insight was taken into account, and that's why when we do stuff like that, we have the best of the best.
Yeah. Now, you and we talk about actual NFL teams and what they're doing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the big winners and losers team by team in the NFL draft. I have about 5 to 10 big losers, and I have 5 to 10 big winners. And there's about 15 teams that had a good draft, and nothing too crazy.
Yeah.
Let's start with the winners, and then we'll talk about the losers. Okay? So I believe that the biggest winner from the draft, the best general manager, was Chris Ballard, the Indianapolis Colts. Do you agree?
Yeah, it's to me, it's one of two. It's either them or the Eagles. I think they maneuvered magnificently. Both of them did. Got what they needed in terms of pieces. And then the thing that I really loved is, and we'll go into this in a second, but go look at the quarterbacks in the AFC right now. If you want the list of them, we'll run it down for you really quickly. Because as we read this list off, I want you to figure out who your QB 13 among this list is. You ready?
Go ahead.
So in the East, you've got Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones. In the North, you've got Burrow, Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, Kenny Pickett. In the South, you now have Trevor Lawrence, CJ Stroud, you have Anthony Richardson, and you potentially have Will Levis at some point this year.
Woo!
And then in the West, you've got Mahomes, Herbert, Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo.
Whoa.
Your quarterback 13 in the AFC may be Mac Jones, right? Look at what is in front of you right now. It's insane. And so the reason that I love so much that the Colts swung for the fences with an Anthony Richardson is if you have just a guy, if you're the Raiders and you're starting Jimmy Garoppolo, you have no hope for wading through all of that. You can wade through the injuries and hope your team carries you, but I promise you, you're not beating Mahomes, Herbert, Allen, Burrow, Aaron Rodgers, Trevor Lawrence in a row. It's just not going to happen, right? And so that's the really concerning part if you're an AFC team that has a quarterback with a low ceiling. And I'll give Mac another year away from Patricia, and I'll give Kenny Pickett another year in Pittsburgh, right? Because we've seen guys take a year 2 jump or a year 3 jump before. I'm not saying they're dead in the water, but if that ceiling isn't there, you're going to have to make tough decisions by the end of year 3 on both of those guys. And the Raiders.
So what you're saying is, if you have a quarterback who's number one, and we have athleticism score, which looks at size and 40 time and burst, vertical jump, broad jump, agility, which is shuttle, 3-cone. We have a database of 278 quarterbacks at PlayerProfiler.com. Go to PlayerProfiler.com, type in Anthony Richardson, and you'll see the athleticism score is 1 of 278. And by the way, Marcus Mosher told me that the Dallas Cowboys are known to use PlayerProfiler.com, and that you can actually see Player Profiler on the computer screens at some of these front offices.
That's awesome.
And he told me in no uncertain terms that one of the reasons why Dallas passed on Michael Mayer in the first round, they were considering Mayer in the first round. He was on their board as a potential first-round pick. And they passed on him because of where he ranked in our athleticism score all time. Can you believe that?
That's fucking awesome.
Do you want to know where Michael Mayer ranks in our athleticism score all time? And again, it factors in size. Michael Mayer is a relatively undersized tight end. He's sub 250 pounds. And because his burst score and his agility score were both sub 50th percentile, he ranked 464 out of 466 all time.
Oof.
It was really bad. His athleticism score is really bad. And that was enough of a concern where Dallas has said, we know any of these players can bust, no matter how dominant they were in college, any player can bust. And one way to cover ourselves is to just make sure that time and time and time again, we're at least bringing elite athletes into the building.
Yeah.
Right. And then if they're also productive in college, then great. Right. CeeDee Lamb was prolific. Like there wasn't a doubt, and he was fast enough and he was athletic enough. Then great. That's fine. It's not going to be a reason why we don't draft a guy. But especially in a deep class where you have all these, Musgraves and Mayers and Kincaids, they didn't want to use a first-round pick on a guy with that athleticism score. Meanwhile, the Colts, that's all they did. They just shopped at the top shelf of athleticism score on PlayerProfiler.com and just found the number one guy. We talked about Julius Brents. You go down the board. It's just it's one guy after another, all the way down to Darius Rush. Darius Rush runs a 4.38, and he played in the SEC. And
Darius
then he went
Rush
in the
freak
fifth round.
Blake Freeland,
that's the Tariq Woolen of this class. 5th round pick. It's crazy.
I mean, it's hard to argue, right? That I don't know.
I mean, Adam Matoma, Adam Aware. I just do, because I can't get all the syllables exactly right. I just kind of flow through it. Adam Matoma, Adam Aware. Like, I don't actually say the whole pronunciation.
You're not just going to call him Ade.
Yeah, I just got Adam Aware, and he had the best athleticism score at edge. Freeland, top athleticism score at tackle. This was one of the greatest drafts of all time by the Colts. And certainly, you keep going down the board. Will Mallory, he was by far and away the most athletic tight end. Other than Kuntz clearly had some issues, whether it was he was too stiff. There was something with Kuntz that chased most teams off of him. But outside of Kuntz, the next best available athlete at tight end on day 3 was Will Mallory. Then Evan Hull is just the perfect complement to Jonathan Taylor. You just go down the board, and who were they drafting in the later rounds? They were drafting a guy from Wagner, a guy from Northern Michigan, which is the only way you're going to get any edge on the competition in those later rounds. I can't say enough. I don't have any words. I don't have any words. And the idea that anyone would argue that no, it was this team. No, it was the Steelers. No, it was this. No. It was clearly the Colts. It's a wide margin. They aced the test. It's 100 out of 100, and I would put it in the top 10 drafts of all time.
The biggest question that we had going into this draft wasn't, is Chris Ballard decent at identifying talent? The question was, can he finally get quarterback that matters? That matters, right? Like, we're not talking about a 1-year rental here. We're not talking about a guy that's a savvy veteran that's going to come in and give you a few snaps and get you to 9-8. If Anthony Richardson hits, you're talking about a profile that has never been seen before. Cam Newton was a freak athlete. He didn't run a 4.4. He didn't run a
4.45.
He didn't run a 4.4 or 2.45. Right?
With a big arm. This is the nuclear weapon, right?
The thing is
the thing you need to compete in the AFC. You're right about that.
Yeah, the thing is, if you're going to swing, right? If you're in the NFC, if you're the New Orleans Saints, you can get away with Derek Carr for a period of time. If you're in the AFC,
Bryce Young, you can get away with.
Yeah, right? You can get away with Bryce Young. If you are in the AFC and trying to win in the next 5 or 6 years, look at the murderer's row of quarterbacks that you have to go through with competent front offices, with competent head coaches. It's just a bloodbath over there, right? And every year you're going to have to either go through one of these 3 teams is probably going to be the number 1 in any given year. You're going to have to go through Kansas City, through Buffalo, or through Cincinnati. And that's not even including the Chargers and Herbert. You're going to have to go through Trevor Lawrence. You might have to deal with the Deshaun Watson or a Lamar Jackson that they've finally given weapons to now. Like, this is, if you are going to draft somebody next year, Raiders, if they're a middling quarterback with an average ceiling, just don't even bother. Just kick the can down the road. Wait until you can find, if it's not Caleb Williams or Drake May, don't even bother. Don't even bother.
Okay, so Houston drafted C.J. Stroud, and you're saying that might not have been good enough. We'll talk about Houston a little bit later when we talk about the worst drafts, right? The worst drafts are coming up. Don't worry. Philadelphia had the second best draft. They just traded down at will as they've been doing, banked future picks, and then just drafted Georgia elite defenders that just dropped to them. They just didn't make mistakes, just kind of took the best of value that came, then didn't panic and trade up, just was like, so yeah, we're going to go with that another Georgia guy. That's awesome. And they got two of Cody's top 3 players on his big board went to the Eagles. Can you believe that?
Look at what they did even after that, right? Like, loved what the Bears did, obviously moving down a spot and picking up a 4 for a guy that they weren't going to take, clearly. But the real marvel here is Howie Roseman sat at 10, moved up, gave up a 4th for the guy that he wanted at 9, right? And then they're like, oh, okay. In our minds, we're all like, shit. Well, they missed out on Nolan Smith because they gave up one more pick and went to get Jalen Carter. Fine, whatever, it is what it is. 20 picks later, they're sitting on the clock. They don't have to move up. They don't do anything. And Nolan Smith is there, right? So the guy that was mocked from the ends of the earth, it was very clear that they wanted him, right? The guy that they wanted at 10 and the guy that they thought would never be there at 10, they got both of them and had to move an extra 4th. That's it. They got both the guy that they wanted if they would have traded up to 3 and the guy that they would have taken if they had stuck in pick at 10. At 9 and 30 and gave up a 4th round pick in the process. Then they went to go get Tyler Steen, Sidney Brown.
And the only reason Tyler Steen was available is because he's going to switch positions. He's going to go from tackle to guard in the NFL, so he's harder to project. So what? You just draft big, athletic dogs.
Then they stole Keely Ringo.
Yes,
right?
That was quietly the best pick.
And then they added another to the quarterback factory in Tanner McKee, who some people are really excited about. And then Alex Dunlap's guy, right? We didn't know if he was going to get drafted at all, if his agent had just said, hey, we don't want him to be drafted. But, last 10 picks of the draft, Moro Ojimo, the defensive tackle from Texas, right? Another just junkyard dog. If you want another guy in your rotation that's just going to fight and scrap, because, you're going to start Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, right? But, again, rotations are important no matter who you are. And to get that kind of depth in round 7, and then 5-star Eli Ricks from Bama as an undrafted free agent, right? They're cleaning up house in Philly. It's hard to argue that anybody is doing a better job as a general manager than Howie Roseman is right now. You're talking about the best overall player on everybody's board at 9 overall. You're talking about a easily top 10 player in Nolan Smith at 30 overall. A likely first-round pick had he not moved from tackle to guard, and Tyler Steen. Sidney Brown, again, another guy that at latest people thought was going to be a round 2 guy. Ringo was mocked in round 1 to some people. Like, this is just hilarious.
That was a ridiculous play. I couldn't believe that.
The rich get richer. This roster is just ridiculous.
Yeah, and it was interesting. The beginning of the 4th round was so rich with talent. It's almost like all the NFL teams got tired in the second half of the 3rd round, and they started making a bunch of bad picks, and they all got some sleep, and they were like, wait a second, all these guys are available? Nick Saldiveri kicks it off, right? You have a 6'6", 320-pound
who they traded up for,
right? He's going to play tackle, and he was awesome at the Senior Bowl. He's available. Jacorian Bennett, the cornerback from Maryland, goes to the Raiders at the 402. He runs a 4.3 flat. Then Ringo. Then Blake Freeland. Then Jake Andrews from Troy. one of the best centers in the draft, if not the best. Then Anthony Bradford, the giant guard from LSU. And then Adebaware goes to the Colts again. I mean, the first 8 to 9 picks, because DeJuan Jones, right, 375 project, but a high upside project from Ohio State, he goes at the 409. And then of course the Patriots had to blow it with a kicker, blow the streak. But those first 9 picks in the 4th round were just exquisite. I thought that was very cool to see. Marcus Mosher believes the Patriots had a great draft. What do you think?
I think it depends on how you are going to evaluate the specialists, right? There is an argument to be made that they overcorrected because of some of the special teams blunders from a year ago. And if you subscribe to that thought, then yeah, there's a lot not to like about New England's draft, right? But on the other side, can we talk about Christian Gonzalez for a second? Because you want to talk about a Bill Belichick defensive back. Like, you just know somewhere Kirby Smart and Nick Saban are swearing over the fact that Belichick gets this guy and they never could get him on campus in Athens or in Tuscaloosa. Because, my God, is that a perfect fit, right? I mean, you know that they had to run in that card. Sitting at 17, there's no way in hell they thought
with Nolan Smith and Christian Gonzalez, those are the 2 picks. No one thought they'd be available where they went.
No.
It's insanity.
Oh, I mean, that was just silliness. The fact that he was there at 17 at all. I don't even know how much they scouted him, as much as they were like, yeah, right, this guy's going to be there. Okay, sure, whatever. And then I'm sure they tripped over themselves running in that card. And then Keon White, who would probably have been a halfway decent pick at 17 anyway.
Yeah.
And they get him 30 spots lit.
You're agreeing. Yes, the Patriots had a good draft. The Patriots had a top 10 draft. We also agree Arizona, right? Arizona had a top 10 draft.
Matt, isn't it nice to have an adult in the room?
Right.
Just one.
Who's the general manager over there in Arizona?
The general manager is the old director of player personnel for the Titans. His name is Monty Ossenfort, and it is a night and day difference, is it not, from the Steve Keim, Cliff Kingsbury, Arizona Cardinals?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I don't care. This is just a brand new approach. Trading down, the master stroke deal with the Texans, just own the Texans and got everything they wanted without having the 2nd pick or the 3rd pick overall, just being able to do whatever they wanted. It was amazing. It was like, this team controls the draft. No, this team controls the draft. Actually, Arizona controlled the draft. Arizona owned the draft. Arizona.
We tried to tell you this 2 months ago.
Yeah,
we
Arizona
tried to tell you this 2 months ago.
Really ran this draft. They really did. It was beautiful to watch. To get Paris Johnson, that's how you rebuild, people. That's how you do it. That's how you rebuild with players like Paris Johnson. That's how you do it. And it's like they didn't have to trade down that far, right? I mean, they traded down and then they traded back up, right?
Yep.
And then they gave themselves the flexibility. They were the ones owning this draft. And then the 210, B.J. Ojolari, one of the better pass rushers, easily could have been a first-round pick. Easily. Garrett Wilson, or Garrett Williams, Michael Wilson, just to trade alone, right? All they needed was the trade. The trade was what won them the draft or made them one of the top drafters. Everything else, the quality selections was icing on the cake.
Yeah, and I think if you go to their late round drafts, right, when you look at the profiles of players that teams are going to take late in drafts, sure, you could get a kicker or a punter or whoever you want there, but to get Clayton Tune, who might start games for them this year, right, if he turns into something that they can flip, right, because we know Kyler Murray's going to miss extended time. They hope he's there at the beginning of the season. I don't know why they would even bother putting him out there. This team is terrible. they're going to be terrible in 2023, but that's not a reflection of this draft. That's just a reflection of where the roster was before this draft, which we really like. Getting Clayton Tune there, I think, was a great idea. And then Keitrell Clark, right? In the 6th round as your slot corner. I think he's going to play for him. I think he's going to be really productive. And that's exactly where you take a defensive back from Louisville that isn't Jair Alexander, right? That is a little bit undersized. That is going to have more of a specialized role in the NFL. Keitrell Clark, I think, is going to be a really good player for them. And again,
that's what you do. Round 4, guard. Round 5, inside backer. Round 6, dime corner. That's what you do. That's the types of positions you want to fill in those rounds. And then you want to put the premium picks up in the top 10, like, left tackle, edge. That's what they did. It was the perfect use of draft capital by position and the best execution of a trade down we saw. That's why the Cardinals are a top 5 draft.
Yeah, the Cardinals got Paris Johnson at 6 when they probably, if they had been forced to stick there, it was either going to be Will Anderson or Paris Johnson, right? So clearly a guy that was, because the quarterbacks were off their board. There's no way they were taking any of them. But if you looked at their draft board, it was probably Will Anderson, Paris Johnson, and then Jalen Carter. And they would have had their choice of the 3 at number 6 anyway, which, again, brilliant, right? Will Anderson just happened to go 3 where they moved out.
We all agree that Pittsburgh had a good draft. They just kind of went chalk. They did what Pittsburgh does. They draft good players.
Yeah. This is your classic Kevin Colbert, Omar Khan draft, right? Some call him the con artist. Love that nickname. I mean, they just sat there and absolutely robbed the NFL draft of talent, right? Like, this is exactly what you want if you're a fan of Pittsburgh, because the thing is, like, you don't want to show them giving up on Kenny Pickett immediately. Broderick Jones at 14, the absolute mountain of a kid from Georgia.
I mean, come on, man. That was Cody's number 4 player.
Yeah.
Number 4 player, the best lineman. You could go Johnson or Jones, either one.
Yeah.
Get one of them, and then to have Jones go 8 picks after Johnson was a crime.
And then you get Joey Porter Jr., and the old jersey of his dad with the first pick in the 2nd round, which they stole from the Bears for Chase Claypool, right? Don't forget the reason that they have that pick, right? So you flipped Chase Claypool into Joey Porter Jr. Congratulations. That's something special.
What an apropos player to go to, Joey Porter. Oh my God.
Right.
Perfect.
It's just a dream.
I mean, you can't, I mean, this is what they do. This is a lineage type franchise. They just love good football players with football names from football families. Just football. Yeah. That's the Steelers.
Matt, they have an edge rusher that's pretty good in Pittsburgh. He played college football at a small school called Wisconsin. So with their second round pick, they took a defensive lineman out of Wisconsin named Keanu Benton, who is another very large human being that moves rather quickly for his size. Loved him. And then we get to potentially the most Steelers pick of all time, Darnell Washington in round 3, right? There was talk, will he go at the end of round 1? Oh, he's definitely going in round 2. No, we'll just sit it here until 93. And once we get this 6'8", 200 upper 200-pound freak of nature here, we'll decide if we want to use him as a 6th offensive lineman or a tight end. Godspeed. Good luck. If you're going to put a safety on him, good luck. If you're going to put a linebacker on him, good luck. And if you're going to allow us to basically have a 6th offensive lineman, have fun, man. Najee Harris is coming right at you. Good luck. Like, that's a perfect pick for them in the sense that, one, Pat Freiermuth's role doesn't change all that much given this, right? He's just going to get to be more of a route runner. And Darnell's going to be that functional 6th offensive lineman, but if you ignore him, he will kill you, right? We saw it at Georgia. As soon as you treat him like a 6th offensive lineman, they're going to throw it to him and you're in big trouble. Okay. 4th round, you go Nick Herbig, another linebacker from Wisconsin. Have you heard this before?
Nick Herbig, linebacker from Wisconsin, goes to the Steelers. I mean, again, this was the most cliche, in a good way, draft by the Steelers of all time. Let's move on. Chicago had a great draft, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think we need to have a little bit of a comparison here, Matt, because off camera you asked me a little bit about what Houston gave up for Will Anderson as a comparison to what the Bears got for the 101.
Yeah, let's talk about
Right.
that.
So Houston, to move from 12 to 3, gave up number 12 overall, number 33 overall, their 24 first, and their 24 third for Will Anderson, because now we know who the pick is, right? And they got back Will Anderson and number 105. Carolina, to move from 9 to 1, gave up 9, 61, 2024 first, 2025 second, and DJ Moore.
It's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, both
It's a lot.
franchises made out like bandits, right? Because
both were too much.
yeah.
And that's why two of the best drafts were the Cardinals and, the Bears. It doesn't have to be hard.
No.
Drafting doesn't have to be hard.
And that's why the story that came out that NFL GMs are upset with Howie Roseman, he's just taking advantage of you guys blowing shit up. It's not like he's
What are they upset about?
He's not like he's reinventing the wheel, right?
They're upset.
They're upset.
That is one of the softest things I've ever heard. These are people that are supposedly commanding and controlling football players, and they're complaining that
Howie Roseman's getting too much shine.
Executive is more cerebral than they are, crunching the numbers better than they are. Oh, please. What did they say? What was the complaint?
The complaint was that Howie Roseman is basically getting too much credit for what he's doing. And all he's doing is taking advantage of y'all grenading yourselves. That's what it is. It's not like he's doing
so
anything.
That was the argument then? They said he's getting too much credit. We suck?
Yeah. Basically, it was just, he's taking advantage of a system that has y'all twisted in pretzels, trying to figure out what to do when all you really need to do is tie your shoe. If Broderick Jones is there at 14, fucking take him.
Yeah.
This isn't hard.
And
right?
He got the original, so the kernel that was planted in the ground that allowed all this to happen was Jalen Hurts in the second round. But everybody had that option. Jalen Hurts ticked by every single team before the Eagles drafted him. So everybody had the option of drafting Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts has a quality that is not talked about enough. The reason why that the Eagles are comfortable bringing on all of these players that have had intersections with law enforcement and have been devalued by other teams, discounted due to character concerns and quotes, right? The reason why the Eagles are more comfortable bringing those types of players into the building is because of Jalen Hurts, because he is that North Star, because he leads by example, right? His father was a football coach. He has size. He has gravitas, and he can walk up to every single player, similar to what Tom Brady did in New England. That New England was comfortable bringing in literal murderers because they knew that the respect that Tom Brady commanded would create a calm and serene atmosphere in practice and in the locker room. And though literal murders were happening off the field and away from the locker room, they were winning games on the field. And having that North Star, having that Tom Brady character, this is the thing that, say, an Aaron Rodgers never signed up for, was never willing to go to this point and never willing to be the leader that a Tom Brady was. And now we see Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, I believe, is taking what Tom Brady did, the roadmap that he built in New England, and taking it to a whole new level with Philadelphia, where they're comfortable. They're just like, we're going to bring this guy into the building, and we're going to introduce him to Jalen, and this is going to be just part of the assimilation into our culture, and the competitive advantage that a Jalen Hurts, not only with his second round contract for a period of time, but no matter what they pay him, it's so much value they're getting on what he brings to the locker room. And again, this is not something that I would have even whispered, even thought, wouldn't have crossed my mind, and I would have mocked people that would mention it as a point of value for Jalen Hurts 5 years ago. I would have laughed. Now that I've seen some things and talked to people like Cody and Alex Dunlap for many years, I have this appreciation for some of the things that the players bring to the table that don't show up in the box score, that we don't have metrics for. And if the general managers want to say Howie Roseman's not getting enough credit, or Howie Roseman's getting too much credit because we're idiots, fine. Howie Roseman's getting too much credit because he has this sort of protective shield on the locker room in Jalen Hurts, that's fine. But I haven't heard either of those things.
Yeah. Look, there are certain positions in sports, and we've talked about what it's like being Cowboys quarterback, that are just lightning rods, right? And it requires a certain level of, you just need to be an adult, right? Like, one of the questions that we have about Green Bay, that we had about Rodgers in Green Bay, once we kind of knew he was going to New York, is how's he going to deal with that media? Because there's a difference between being a quarterback in New York and being a quarterback in Green Bay, right? The Eagles quarterback is another one of those things, right? The fans were ready to throw Carson Wentz under the bus a year after he was borderline an MVP candidate, after he threw for 4,000 yards with you, me, and Dupree at receiver, right? And a year later, they were ready to run him out of town. And the thing with Jalen is, this locker room is so tight-knit. Howie has such a clear plan here. Jeffrey Lurie is signing off on everything he does. Nick Sirianni clearly building a culture there, that no one player is really going to mess that up, right? And now they can afford to have multiple of those players, right? Whoever it is, and they bring in. And it's because they've built a culture over years, right? It didn't happen overnight. Over years, they built a culture where now they can bring in guys like that. And I think that that's what you're seeing start to happen in Chicago, is they're adopting the model of, hey, we need a lot of help. Let's just take the best player that we can get at a premium position where we can get him. And that's how you end up with Darnell Wright at 110, right? He wasn't the best tackle on everybody's board, but he was the best tackle on their board. And they figured, hey, we have to protect Justin Fields. Last year, the biggest problem that we had was the best part of our offense was Justin running for his life, right? That can't be the plan every year.
That's why you have to trade down if you have one of those picks. That's why the trade down is so powerful, because then at that point, all you need to do is just go chalk. Just to go the greatest need at the most valuable position, who is the greatest difference maker that's available. Yeah. It's just 1 + 1 + 1 = 3, draft Darnell Wright. 1 + 1 + 1 = 3, draft Gervon Dexter. Draft Tyreek Stevenson. It's easy.
Zach Pickens.
Draft Roschon Johnson.
Draft Roschon Johnson.
Roschon in the 4th round. Just perfect. Just the perfect picks. Perfect picks. Then what do they do? What do they do late? Oh, Kennesaw Valley State. D tackle from Kennesaw Valley State. Total project. Maybe the guy puts on weight. Travis Bell. Who knows? Practice squad. Whatever. But it's just the right types of players with the right profiles in the right rounds. That's all you have to do. And if you're trading down, you're banking picks late and you're banking picks next year, then at that point you just have to just follow the board, and you don't have to get creative. You don't have to pick up the phone. You don't have to do anything.
No.
If you're Chicago or you're Arizona, you just hang up the phone, process the trade, and you just put your feet up and you just connect the dots on your board with every pick, and it's a wrap.
Yeah, and the other two picks that I really liked in the mid rounds, Tyler Scott in round 2 was a little rich for me, but in round 4, right? 133 overall.
Sure.
And then the guy that, most people had in round 1 in their way too early 2023 mocks a year ago, Noah Sewell, the linebacker from Oregon. Now, this year was rough. Don't get me wrong. But again, we talked on the draft stream. One of the best ways to get values on players is to draft guys that had better seasons 2 years ago than they had last year, when everybody wants to devalue what they did. And even if he busts, right? Even if people are right about him in the sense that he's not an NFL caliber player, you only spent a day 3 lotto ticket on him. So who cares?
Who cares? Exactly.
Right.
Who cares?
It's not like
Who
you drafted
cares?
him in round 2.
Yeah. Who cares? Now, let's talk about some sleeper teams. You mentioned a team in the Northwest that you believe had a sleeper quality draft. Maybe everyone thinks it's a quality draft. It's not a sleeper. It was a sleeper because I didn't think of them initially as having a great draft because of the Zach Charbonnet pick has scrambled my brain.
Seattle. We got to talk about Seattle.
Yeah.
And we also have to talk here about what happens when someone messes with your plan, right? They clearly, and I mean clearly, sniped the shit out of Detroit. Nobody on earth had Devin Weatherspoon to Seattle. And the reason is they found value at corner forever. They found Richard Sherman late. They found Brandon Browner late. Historically, just go back through all of the corners that Pete Carroll has ever had. He's found them all late.
Woolen?
Tariq Woolen last year, right?
Come on.
So the idea that they would completely flip that on its head and take one at 105 tells you everything you need to know about how special a talent Devin Witherspoon is, right?
He's really good.
Really good. Then they got the best receiver in the draft in Jackson Smith-Njigba. And the question that people were asking is, well, you have DK and you have Tyler Lockett. Why? Because Tyler Lockett's not getting any younger, right?
No. It was a great pick. It was a great pick. By the way, though, I mean, I know Devin Witherspoon is a talent. He's 180 pounds.
Yeah.
I don't believe in drafting a cornerback in the top 5 that's 180 pounds. Absolutely not. That's why I'm a Julius Brents guy, because Julius
Brents, great player,
is a monster.
I think Pete
Devin
Carroll
Witherspoon's a different type of guy, and I understand that you need guys like Devin Witherspoon to cover the Devontae Smiths and the Tyreek Hills. I understand that. I get it 100%, but that's just, for me, especially at value, given where they were drafted, I'd much rather have a Julius Brents. I'm usually not going corner in the top 5, so I didn't love the pick, but I think what you're looking at is a preponderance of picks. Great job on Jackson Smith-Njigba and not getting fooled by Quentin Johnston, who is slow Brashad Perriman, and then Derek Hall, the outside backer, who's actually 255 pounds from Auburn. Loved the Anthony Bradford pick, just a giant guard. We talked about that earlier. I just didn't see there weren't enough sort of correct answers on this particular test for me to put them in my top 5 or even top 10, but I understand why you did. I mean, Kenny McIntosh was a wasted pick. Charbonnet in the second round was complete squandering of draft capital. So I'm not there with you for a bunch of the reasons I just outlined, but I understand why you liked it. But just they had 4 picks, Anand, in the top 51.
Yeah.
So 52. They had 4 picks in the top 52. Because of that, I think that your perception of their draft is skewed. You have to look at the value they got in each of those picks.
My 2 favorite picks that they made actually were round 5 guys, and they're both Michigan guys. Mike Morris, who is going to be rotational edge rusher for them, and I absolutely believe he's going to make the roster. And then in round 5, Oluwatimi, the center from Michigan.
Watimi.
Yeah. So I mean, you had 2 really good players in round 5 that are not only going to make the roster, but I think actually actively contribute as rookies and beyond. So it's more of they bolstered their roster in a way that good teams can afford to. And I think they realized last year, hey, we are a legitimate team. We do have some pieces that no one thought we'd have, because we were looking at them as number one overall pick watch going into last year.
Right.
And they clearly, and last year's draft allowed them to take some swings in this year's draft that they probably otherwise might not have. But again, they waited until round 5 to get their, situational edge rusher, their center potentially of the future, but we'll see. And Oluwatimi, because I think he can also play guard if they need him to. But what I love so much about Seattle's draft, other than the Charbonnet pick, which I hate for fantasy and real life reasons, they are going to be who they are, though. Seattle's always going to take a running back. We know this. Other than that, I thought that they really did well, given where they are and where they want to go, right? Because the NFC right now is there for the taking outside of Philly, because we don't know what we're going to get out of the Niners quarterback room. Other than them in Dallas, right? You're talking about that third and fourth spot is up for grabs, and we'll see who comes to grab it. I think Seattle did a great job with what they could in terms of trying to push that envelope and really get to the top of the conference.
Grab them by the Seahawk. Now, we're not going to get to the big losers. So apologies to the live stream people. It was a misleading title on the stream. We will update the title on YouTube. The podcast audience has no idea this is even happening. They have no idea there was a big misleading of the YouTube audience, but we're not going to get to the big losers. We're only going to get to the big winners here, because we just, God damn it, we have too many great takes, Anand.
We do.
We're a victim of our own excellence.
That, and we talk about winners first here.
Yeah, well,
losers
I wanted to
need not
save the
apply.
losers because I thought, oh, that's what I'm going to tease, but I teased it right into oblivion. And I'm going to be in Corfu, Greece, next week, but I'm bringing my microphone. So maybe we can do a show, and I'll do the show from Corfu. How about that?
Oh, that'll be a heck of a time.
How about that? Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that. So, but I have a sleeper. I have a sleeper team that not enough people are talking about that I thought had a great draft. Why is no one talking about the Buccaneers?
I think we should talk about
the Buccaneers at 19, Kalijah Kancey. Right now, if you're going to take a disruptive, like, run defender, just make sure you don't take him in the top 10. Okay, so this was at least a little bit better value than Vita Vea from the past, but this is a 3 technique that can not just defend the run, but just can disrupt the entire interior of any given play at any given time. So I love this pick from Pittsburgh. We not typically the type of guy that I would go for, but there weren't that many 3 techniques in this draft that were any good. He was one of a few, and so from a scarcity standpoint, I understood it, and I don't hate it. How about that? I didn't hate the Kalijah Kancey pick, but I know that Alex and Cody liked it a lot.
Yeah, they're chasing, like we've seen when guys are kind of a little bit misbodied, we'd call them, right? They're not typical size profiles for certain positions. The thing that you look for is, well, if he breaks out fully and turns into this, what is he going to turn into? And I think their hope is that they get the diet Aaron Donald out of
That's what they're hoping for.
Kancey.
I know. Yeah, the
Right?
3 technique. But he was the biggest riser on Cody's big board. He was up 12 spots by draft day.
Really good player.
Yeah, Cody was super thrilled with his tape, his profile, and just thought it was great pick. Solid, again, not a mistake. At least it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a whip.
Yeah.
It was a solid pick. And then they followed up with 2 of the best picks, 3 of the best picks. 3 of my favorite picks in the entire draft were Cody Mauch. He's a first-round talent. He's missing his front teeth. He's got long Viking hair. He is going to be a complete animal. Animal. I mean, animal. I think are they gonna move him to guard?
I think they probably will move him to
They're
guard.
probably moving to guard. I don't think he's quite big enough to play right tackle in the league. Likely moving him to guard, and he's going to be one of those guards in the league. He's going to be in the league for 15 years. We're all going to know him at various points for plays he makes where his helmet gets ripped off, or there's some dirty
Reminds me-
play where he's biting a guy. It's going to be amazing. He's going to be amazing. And then Yaya Diaby, one of the best
Oof.
picks in the third round. I couldn't believe how far he fell. Neither could Cody. And then we also couldn't believe how far Trey Palmer fell. Trey Palmer is one of, if not the best quintessential field stretchers in this draft, right? There's a lot of small Z profile receivers, but Trey Palmer's the only one that's 6'1", 190, but also has the 4.3 flat wheels. And the fact that he went in the
round
14th pick in the 6th round, that's insane. Look at the Darius Davis, all these guys going before him. I'm like, he can play special teams. I thought just based on special teams, he'd be a 4th round pick. I thought the 4th round was the absolute floor for him. Yeah. That he could leak into the early 3rd, maybe early 3rd to late 4th. I thought that was the range of Trey Palmer. A lot of these other wide receivers, the range in the middle rounds is much wider. You really don't have, it's harder. Like Cedric Tillman, it was hard for me to figure out where he might go. Right? Yeah. I knew Michael Wilson was a 3rd round pick. That was locked in. Trey Palmer, I figured the special teams ability would not allow him to make it out of the 4th round. Those guys almost never make it out of the 4th round. And yet he made it to the 6th round, so that was fantastic. He's not just a special teamer, though. He put up over 1,000 yards at Nebraska, and he was stuck behind a bunch of knuckleheads at LSU, which is why he had to transfer.
Yeah, and look, again, one of the things that you can choose to bet on late in the draft is kid was a 5-star. They don't give out a whole lot of those, right? If you're going to bet on a 5-star talent being underdeveloped by a program like Scott Frost's Nebraska,
and he's a dog, top dog rating.
He's a dog.
And the thing is, I tried to talk to him at the Senior Bowl, and we'll play the interview in the outtakes of the podcast. I did interview him, but, I mean, he was stone-faced. He was expressionless. Because I try to make guys laugh. I try to catch him off guard. I try to say funny stuff, be a little silly. And he was not having it. He is serious. He was the George Pickens of the Senior Bowl.
Oh,
and I'm like,
that's high praise.
And to me, I respect that. I love the affable guys. Evan Hull, super affable. Musgrave, affable, right?
Yeah.
Cool guys.
Yep.
Trey Palmer was just there for business. He was on a business trip.
Matt, you haven't even gotten to my favorite pick of this entire draft class, entire Bucs draft class, who was the last player they selected.
Oh, I know, Jose Ramirez.
Outside linebacker, edge from Eastern Michigan, Jose Ramirez.
The small school backer. Hey!
If you look up 2 years from now, and Jose Ramirez is a very productive, and I said very, not just productive, very productive edge rusher for them, do not be surprised at all, because there were teams that I think had him much higher than that just didn't get a chance to take him. Other positional needs, whatever the situation was. Jose Ramirez is a guy that you're going to look at in 2 or 3 years and be like, whoa, where did he come from?
Yeah, I mean,
and
he's
the
got
answer
an
is pick 190.
Wide receiver level agility score.
Yeah.
And he's above average in the 40 time, in the burst score, but an exceptional agility score. So you get that kind of athlete at edge in the 6th round, unfair.
Yeah.
Unfair. I mean, everybody remember this pick. Everybody remember we told you we were one of the few shows talking about the Buccaneers draft. I haven't heard anyone talking about the Buccaneers draft.
I mean, they did really well, Matt.
It was awesome.
I don't think I went through this fully enough, but I mean, again, Trey Palmer, Jose Ramirez in the 6th round, that's enough for me to be. It's enough for me to be on board with a good draft class.
Right. And we will talk about the worst drafts, the absolute worst drafts, next time.